we are getting back into it with a little bit of reading. Oh, God, everyone's favorite subject in the year 2024, reading. I've been trying to kind of knock out some more books lately. I feel like it's a better thing to do than to look at the screens all the time. When you're an editor, and when you're constantly looking at a computer, it gets tiring. Your eyes get tired after a while. I've been video editing and doing podcasts and stuff and doing video work for a long time. And I think what you don't realize is that some of the consequences of doing video work like that all the time. I've talked about with other coworkers and blah 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 and other stuff like that with different jobs I've had over the years of like how headphone use consistently can kind of lead to some damage, right? Because you're not supposed to have the headphones on all the time. That's why a lot of video editors have speakers right in front of their workstation, and so they can hear not only stereo, but so they don't have to constantly wear the cans, right? Like as they call them, right? But reading, which has been in vogue since Gutenberg, since the printing press, turns out actually really fun to do, especially if you have a good book like The Yankee Way by Andy Martino. And so it doesn't take a genius to figure out that I'm a Yankee fan. I'm a product of the 1990s dynasty. I started kind of picking up baseball around 98, I think. I have flashes that I feel like I can remember 96, but it might be 99 because the Yankees played the Braves, so it's very, very difficult for me to understand, like, was that the first time that they played? Was that the second time that they played? But I certainly remember them playing the Padres, and I believe that was in 98. And that's where I kind of picked up my baseball fandom, and that was a really good time to be a fan of the Yankees, right? Because you went through a not only sustained success for really until 2004, you had a long run, but also championships to boot, right? They were winning in 96, they were winning in 98, 99, and 2000. They won 4 out of 5, and then they went to the World Series in 2001 against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Came within essentially a strike from winning in 5 out of 6 in that time, and then basically lost pretty terribly to the Marlins in 2003, and then obviously the choke to the Boston Red Sox in 2004, which we don't have to talk about. We don't have to talk about it. It's been 20 years, but we don't have to talk about it. I actually kind of think personally, the 2001 World Series is probably the worst hurt for a Yankees fan as opposed to 2004. A lot of people will talk about the rivalry in 2003 and how if they won the World Series in 2003, 2004 wouldn't have hurt so much and blah, 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 all this rationale. But to me, the Red Sox were a really good team. The Red Sox were a better team in 2003, and they kind of, Aaron Boone's home run off of Tim Wakefield, didn't exactly spell a dominant Yankee win in 2003. So, but 2001, they probably could have beat the Diamondbacks that year, and especially considering, and they mentioned that in this book, especially considering all the stuff that happened in 2001. I think it was again, a lot of people have said it's the only year that a lot of people were rooting for New York because of circumstances that happened that year. But let's get to the book. The book, The Yankee Way by Andy Martino. I picked this up just because I saw an interview on Foul Territory with Andy Martino, who's a reporter for SNY, basically trying to explain this tagline here at the bottom: the untold inside story of the Brian Cashman era. And to be honest, as a Yankee fan who experienced the Yankees in '98, I hadn't really thought that much about how they had built the team, how the front office had really gone about building a team that was of championship caliber. I think I had heard a lot of commentary on Steinbrenner and how he was banned from baseball for a while, and heard little glimmers of it. But my knowledge of the New York Yankees pre-1996, 1995, maybe a little bit when Buck Showalter was at the helm, is very, very low. My idea of who Gene Michael was, this might sound like blasphemy to a lot of New York fans that are rabid, but like, I knew Gene Michael was the GM. You know, I didn't know how he kind of came to be, who his influences were. Bill Livesay, who they mentioned as basically the kind of the author of the Yankee Way and the creator of a lot of the traditions that you see. You know, they talk about like the facial hair policy, the fact that everyone kind of looks militaristic, right? The no kind of fooling around, the professionalism. Things that are annoying in the 2024 Yankees and today's current Yankees. They explain how they kind of came to be and why they are like that. And they go into some in-depth moments with George Steinbrenner taking over the team and seeing people fool around and not take things seriously. And they go into the relationships between the front office and the commitment that George Steinbrenner kind of cultivated through a crazy run of firings and hirings and rehirings and refirings and honestly, it gives you a better picture of what the Yankees' background was, and definitely gave me the impression that no matter how crazy that the Yankees' trades or dealings or what feel like, that they are nothing compared with the way that the 70s Yankees were run. The back and forth in the media between Reggie Jackson and George Steinbrenner, the back and forth between Thurman Munson and George Steinbrenner, the firings of complacent GMs, the GMs that were, you know, Gene Michael trying to configure great teams only to have some of these prospects ripped out from under him, from undermining from the owner of the team. All these things are explained in this book and really give you good context. It does feel like in the beginning, and I'm about halfway through it, so I'm not finished with the book. I'm right up to basically around 2004, 2005 in the book. It reads as like a speed cliff note history of the Yankees' long history. And in a way, it perks your interest just enough to make you want to go research more of those teams, right? Because they're interesting in their own right? But they give you enough nuggets to kind of give you an idea of what relationships were like between Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, right? I'm not exactly researching that all the time. Or Thurman Munson and Reggie Jackson. If you weren't there with the team, you know, if you weren't watching the team, if you were watching the team, you probably know these stories, right? But, you know, I came around 98, started watching baseball in 98, and so all these stories were, you know, I'd heard about them, but I hadn't really read about them, and that's what this book is great about. And it talks about the rise of Gene Michael and basically the rise of Brian Cashman, right? It does state in the book that it's not a book about Brian Cashman. It's a book about the Yankees and the front office and their logic behind it. And that is something that we don't get a lot of. The Yankee Way itself is to be closed off and not give away the secrets and of what you're doing. And that's very much their MO to the media. So to get an inside look about what it means to be a Yankee and what that logic is and where that logic is coming from is actually a really interesting read. The Yankee Way itself is basically a document that they had developed the front office had developed over the years about how certain things are run, what you should look for in players. And apparently a lot of people who had come from the Yankee front office is now all over baseball, and the Yankee Way is something that's given out, a document that's given out to most players and front office personnel that are Yankees. That being said, the other impression I got about this book was that it was very much very much read, at least the first half. And again, I have not completed the book yet. I'm about page 170 at this point. But it reads as if kind of undermining Moneyball a little bit. And the only caveat that I would say to this is that, yeah, that might be true, right? I can't imagine that Billy Beane, Billy Beane is very much credited as the father of analytics, right? Or really Bill James is, but Billy Beane started implementing it in the front office, and they make the case that, yes, Billy Beane was made famous by not only the book Moneyball, but Michael Lewis, which is also a very good read if you haven't read Moneyball. Even if you don't like baseball, Moneyball is a good read. And Michael Lewis has a couple other books that are very, very, very popular. Liar's Poker, and he just had that one on the cryptocurrency kid who went to jail. Infinite, Going Infinite. And so if you're not a baseball fan, go read Moneyball. It might make it more interesting. If you are a baseball fan, especially if you're my age and you watched that Oakland team in 2001, you're going to know all the names in that book. So go read it. This one kind of reads as basically saying, hey, listen, like, he wasn't the first one to recognize the importance of on-base percentage, right? The Yankees were doing it a long time ago. In fact, there are a lot of front office personnel that are doing it because the Yankee Way, the Yankee Way was written down and it was passed around, and other people moved to different organizations, and then it became something dropped. It became a little bit more, implemented in other clubs because of this document and because of this new way of looking at things that was fostered by Bill Livesay. So. And other front office personnel. So the one thing I would make I take a little bit of issue with is that, yes, they may have coveted on base percentage, but the Yankees always had a bigger payroll. And I think that's the one thing that's probably not touched upon, right? That I think the reason that Moneyball gets a lot of credit, and Billy Beane and the Oakland A's front office, is because you're doing the same premise. Right? You're looking for those people that get on base and manufacture runs that equal wins. But they're doing it with a fraction of the budget that the Yankees had. Now, that may have not always been the case in going back to the 60s and 50s and stuff like that. I can't tell you what the payrolls looked like. But it certainly after the Yankees, since I've started watching the Yankees in 98, the Yankees have always been a team that has benefited from bigger payroll. And that has changed as it's gone forward because of revenue sharing and, bolstering these small market teams so you can't have a run of a dynasty like you did in the 90s. So a lot of their money is going down to smaller market teams like the Marlins, like the Rays, in order to kind of keep it balanced. But that's what made Moneyball so significant. So while this book kind of tries to, kind of make the case that the Yankees were doing this way beforehand, they definitely had an additional benefit because you didn't have to go find a relative unknown like, a Scott Hatterberg for $200,000 or whatever. They could go pick up that, a Jason Giambi who already had all the stats that they wanted and go from there. So it does kind of like not address the elephant in the room a little bit, but that being said, it is a really, really good book. It reads very, very quickly. I highly recommend you go pick it up. This is The Yankee Way by Andy Martino. This is not like any kind of paid, ad or anything. This is a book I picked up because I was going to the airport and I was going to Minnesota and going to see a Twins game and wanted to read something baseball related. I do feel like these baseball books are like popcorn. I've read The Yankee Years by Joe Torre. There was another one I read that was there was Moneyball that I read. They just read fast for some reason. I think just when you pick up a good book, man, there's nothing better than just looking up and realizing that you're on page 200 and you're like, wow, it's only been 4 days because I'm a pretty slow reader. Anyway, this is The Yankee Way by Andy Martino. Go pick it up. And let's talk about basically how the team, how other teams conduct themselves. And the reason I wanted to bring up this book before I went on to my next subject was because The Yankee Way explained a lot of reasons behind Yankee decisions and people making an effort to put a team together that is professional, and where the lines were crossed. Now, with George Steinbrenner, it seemed like, and people can correct me at the time, it seemed like George Steinbrenner had a very erratic line, as opposed to like Hal right now, which is very a little bit more reserved than his father was, for sure. About where the line is that you cross into unprofessional. And that brings me to the next subject that we want to talk about. So Jorge Lopez of the New York Mets, a lot of people are talking about this, gets ejected from a game basically against the Dodgers, right? And he, because of a check swing that Freddie Freeman checked his swing on, right? And he starts barking at the third base coach, and you can see, let me see if I can start pushing this stuff. He starts kind of barking here at the third base ump. And eventually, things come to a level where he gets thrown out of the game. Not happy about it, obviously. He starts barking at the third base ump again. He keeps on going. Let's see. And the biggest thing that came out of this was right here. As Carlos Mendoza is trying to defuse the situation, Jorge Lopez throws his glove into the stands, which is not something you see very often. I don't think that you go to a baseball game and see that very often. Occasionally, bats, before they had the protective screen, bats would come into the field of play, which, by the way, everyone's like, I'd love a bat. When a bat's flying at you from the baselines, that is a scary moment. It's scarier than a 110 mile per hour fastball coming to you from off the bat. It is a scary moment when you see that helicopter like object in the sky coming at you. Happened to me and my father in Montreal, and I think it was Raul Mondesi or something like that. He was on the Jays at the time, maybe. And I think he wanted the bat back, right? He was like, well, I'm not going to give you a bat, right? And people were wrestling for it in the stands. It was kind of mayhem, as it always is when something goes into the stands. I mean, I was just looking at a video last night of Judge's 60th home run ball, which was that amazing game that Giancarlo Stanton hit a grand slam to win. And people just brawling in the stands just to get a baseball. I mean, it was a significant baseball, but the team's going to get it back, right? Like, you're not going to keep that baseball. You're not going to sell that baseball. I think even the 62nd home run ball, I think the guy tried to keep and try to sell. I don't think he got much for it. Or maybe he did, but it wasn't as much as he wanted. I know that. Anyway, Jorge Lopez, back to the subject, gets thrown out of the game. He throws his glove into the stands, which is not the most professional thing in the world. But I think very ripped up about it. So let's listen to the audio after the game. And this is the problematic part, because after the game, the media comes up to him. I guess the timeline's a little fuzzy, but I think they had a team meeting or something like that. The media comes up to him, and he says this. And let's go listen to the sound. Let me see if I can push this through here.
Carlos Mendoza said that he understands the emotion, but that particular action of throwing your glove into the stands was unacceptable. Looking back on it, do you regret doing that?
No, I don't regret it. I think I've been looking the worst teammate probably in the whole MLB. So, whatever happened. So,
just to clarify what you said, just because I didn't fully understand. Did you say I'm on the worst team? Is that what you had said?
Yeah, probably. It looked like.
And that they were embarrassed by you? Is that what you?
Yeah, they did.
Why do you think that?
Huh?
Why do you think that?
What I think that?
Yeah, why?
What you think? Walk into the dugout and throw the bluff on the middle of the game.
But are you frustrated by how you've been used?
No.
Do you want to be here tomorrow?
I'll be here. Yeah.
So a lot of people have been talking about this, and the reason that this is significant is because the Mets DFA'd him. They designated him for assignment. If you don't know what that means, they basically put him on waivers. And so they have about 7 days or 8 days or 10 days or whatever the limit is now to basically make a trade with another team, right? To get somebody for him. I think that they retain their salary. Or maybe they don't. Or they release him. Or they designate him for an assignment and they cut him from the team, and then I think they retain their salary. Anyway, I have to look up the money situation about DFAs. But they have a window to trade this player and get rid of him, right? And the Mets, since the comments, which he basically may have said teammate or may have said the worst team, I'm here to say that even if he did, I don't think that he probably meant the worst team. It sounds like he's trying to say teammate. It's probably a translation error. But even if it wasn't a translation error, personally, I think this is the most accurate reporting in the New York Mets that there has been in a long, long time. Sports interviews are boring. They are boring. Everybody says the same thing. I'm a big Yankees fan, but Aaron Judge says the same thing, like Derek Jeter did before him, after every single game. It's either baseball or tough things happen, or at the end of the day, we're grinding. We're pushing that rock up the mountain. It's the same bullcrap every single time. The Mets are sitting at a paltry 15 and a half games back at this point, right? They're 24-33. Right, the Mets have been very, very clear that 2024 was going to be a transition year. They were going to go all in on 2025. Whether that remains to be true, who knows? But to release a guy for saying that he's on the worst team, it's true. You released a man because he spoke the truth. Now, he didn't probably mean it. Again, he released a statement. A pretty boilerplate statement saying, that's not what I meant. They kind of blamed the media a little bit, whatever it was, and blah 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 blah. So he and the Mets kind of clapped back, saying he wasn't released for what he said. He was released for throwing his glove into the stands, to which is also a very problematic thing. I mean, there are worse things that happen on a baseball field all the time, right? I mean, if you're going to set a precedent that embarrassing the team by showing any kind of emotion or whatever, or being entertaining, well, they might have to cut every single player in baseball, right? I mean, yes, it's extreme. Throwing a glove over the protective netting is extreme. But before that protective netting, pitchers would just give crap to the people sitting in the front row all the time, whether it's balls or whether it was the glove. I'm sure this is not the first glove that's entered the stands. Right? Trevor, there was the guy on the Reds for a long time, the reliever on the Reds, who would just yell and scream at players, right, when he struck them out, right? Throwing a glove over that's why you released him, because they embarrassed the organization by throwing a glove, right? It's embarrassing for the organization to not do anything when they're 24-33. Don't cut a reliever. Cut the front office for putting this crappy team together, right? Let the blame lie where it's supposed to be, and in the front office where you put together a roster that can't hit, can't field, and can't pitch. Or blame the owner who brought in, again, lest we forget, bringing in players like Luis Severino, who was clearly at the end of his effectiveness. I mean, when Brian Cashman starts to get rid of somebody, you should probably know, man, don't pick that person up, because the Yankees figured out there's no more in the tank. Harrison Bader, again, not a great pickup. If you looked at a lot of the clips from last year from the Yankee team, Francisco Lindor not having a good season. Pete Alonso on his free agent year not having a good season. So, like, who's to blame here, right? Is it really effective to send a message that much by cutting the guy for showing emotion? Or really, essentially, let's be real, they cut him because of what he said, and it was a translation error, and it's on the Mets to kind of go, okay, this is not... This maybe is deserving of a, hey, you should probably be a little bit more cognizant of what you say, because you don't want a situation like the 1970s Yankees where people are battling in the press. It's entertaining. It's entertaining for every fan that watched, but you probably don't want that precedent to be set, because you don't want to be running and trying to deal with all these issues all the time if someone's that candid. With that being said, Jorge Lopez, good on you for actually being accurate about the Mets' position this year. There's no reason why every single coach has to be as sterile in speaking to the media as they are. The players, over the last 30 years, the players have been way more open about being emotional on the field, whether it's crazy bat flips, whether it's pumping their fist on the mound. Every pitcher now looks like Jabba Chamberlain. Every pitcher looks like Roger Clemens seething off the mound, right? There's no reason why the clips after the end of the game have to be so sterile, right? Call a spade a spade. The Mets are a bad team right now. It's no problem saying that. Those kind of comments, yeah, maybe affect clubhouse vibes, but that's what you want to affect when the team stinks, right? Say they're bad. Call a spade a spade. The worst thing as a Yankee fan over the last season, because they were 82-80, and again, it's a winning record, but was hearing Aaron Boone, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Anthony Rizzo, Volpe, whatever, whoever it was at the mic say the same garbage. Cole, that, hey, they're competitive, they're grinding out there. I don't care. Just call a spade a spade. Yeah, we stink right now. We're getting better, right? At least give it a little bit of life. So even if he did mean it, I still give credit to this guy. Like, it's the most accurate reporting on the Mets anyone's ever done, right? Because it cut right to the juice, right? Cut right through it. Anyway, they shouldn't have DFA'd him. I think that's kind of an extreme case in this case. Let him speak. If you really have that much of a problem with it, or if it becomes an issue, I could understand if this was the 12th time he had said something, and maybe it was, maybe internally maybe externally we just don't know, then I can understand, really being affected by this, but and really wanting to make a decision, being the Mets. But this seems like an extreme case. It just seems another reflection of, like, the Mets brass just don't know what the standard is, and no one's written it down. It just seems extreme. So it stinks. Sorry for Jorge Lopez gets cut. Hopefully he'll join another organization that knows what they're doing. And the Mets have to really, really kind of pick it up. They've started to make some moves. Brett Brady has just been DFA'd, sent to the option to AAA. And, hopefully they make some moves, because it's high time. 24-33, that's not exactly going to instill a lot of faith in your fan base. So, and I say this as a Yankee fans who really likes the Mets too. I don't have any hatred for the Mets. I love the Mets. I like most teams that are good. I like competitive and awesome baseball. So just what an extreme case.